Hi, everybody. We have a bonus episode for you this week because I was recently participating in Almost 30 Podcasts Day Camp, where they had a lineup of incredible speakers, all talking about the power of being in transition in your life. And we covered various aspects of it. So I was very lucky to be on talking about using human design to navigate through changes. And it was a talk that I felt was so valuable that they very kindly let us share it with you because at the time it was only for people who'd signed up to the camp. And sometimes what happens with me is I'll say something that is sort of very custom to that moment, and then that's the only place where it ever comes out or the only place where it lives. And I'm kind of learning now that sometimes there's a value in sort of recirculating things because you just say something once on the internet and you assume it's kind of people who want to receive it, but that's not necessarily the case. So they were very, very kind to let us share this with you, and I hope you really enjoy it. And if you're interested to gather more help with navigating a transition yourself, you can check out their book, Almost 30, which is out now. As you probably know, Krista is a very dear friend of mine. I adore Lindsay as well. And they've really pieced together a full tome. It's not just a book, it's a full tome of everything that they've gathered from almost 10 years in interviewing basically the top experts in spiritual, physical, emotional, and mental change and transition in the world, and have really collated it into a thorough manual that is literally designed to help hold your hand through those moments that we all go through. So I'll link to that in the notes below.
I want you to know that if you've never heard about human design before, or if you're really deep in, this session today is just going to be more of a connecting to what's going on in the world right now and how we can really use this information and make it really simple to actually move the needle forward in our lives. So one of the things that really happens with spiritual information is that when we first come across it, it's so soothing and it's such a remembrance back to, what our souls know to be true. However, sometimes what can happen, and this is the biggest tenet of human design, is that we cannot solve the problems of the mind by using the mind. And so even though we try to muscle our way through these big conundrums and these big sort of crossroads in our lives, raise your hand if you're in a crossroads right now. You cannot do them by thinking your way out of them. You cannot meditate your way out of them. You cannot sort of poll the rest of the world too much in order to get the answer. So along comes human design, 40 years ago to say that there is a completely different way of doing life. And that is not by using the mind, but by surrendering the mind to the form, surrendering the mind to this vehicle. Now, human design is actually the science of your aura, your energetic body, and how that functions. So you have a very specific vehicle that is your energy body that works completely differently to everybody else's. And in the same way that you cannot drive a Jaguar the same way, the exact way that you drive an Audi, you need to know how your specific form works. And when you surrender to the form and you surrender the mind to the form, what ends up happening is that the mind can actually work so much better, because the mind is actually designed to be looking outside of itself at the world around us and becoming a genius at something outside of us. And yet, we are all overusing the mind by looking inwards and kind of draining its battery on all the questions like, what am I doing with my life? What's my purpose? Am I doing this right? What's wrong with me? And so on and so forth. So the premise behind human design is that if we allow this thing to operate itself, we get to enter what is called passenger consciousness. Passenger consciousness means that you get to enjoy the movie of your life and watch it happening as it's unfolding. Right now, because we're overthinking everything, we really don't get to enjoy things as they're happening. We are constantly feeling like we have to be one step ahead. So what I feel is really important to speak about with all of us right now is that we all feel like we are going through such big changes and such big ego deaths, right? Parts of us that are dying off without us even necessarily having directly wished them to die off. And this is where human design can really help, because if you've ever looked at your design, you've also seen that you have many different components to your design. You have, your digestion and your environment and your gifts and the incarnation cross and all these sorts of things. And sometimes we can get so stuck in trying to figure out how close we are to living those things. But really, the magic is in two simple parts of your design, and they are the strategy and the authority. Now, your strategy, if you know, is how you make things happen in the world. Now, the important thing to know about your strategy is that we have gotten so hung up on manifestation that we are not living in this idea that the universe knows what's best for us and is already trying to send us the things that have our name on them. We have become so far away from trust that we're still living in that masterminding of how do I make this happen? How do I call this to me? Instead of the universe has already sent everyone every single blessing that we couldn't even spend our whole lives getting every single one of them and have none left. There's so many more lifetimes worth more blessings that are trying to make their way in. And so all that we can do is either be ourselves, which is when those things come to us naturally, or we can kind of veer off being who we really are, in which case the universe, because it has so much grace, can sometimes delay a blessing because you're not ready to hold that blessing. You are not in a space where you wouldn't burn that blessing to the ground, or you wouldn't not know how to handle it or to appreciate it, or to, for want of a better word, be a vibrational match for that thing. So this is why, and again, raise your hand if you have kind of almost got jaded with the idea of manifestation, because we're all sort of realizing this now, that yes, we can get all that we want and we can use willpower for that to an extent, and we can muscle our way into manifesting things. But ultimately, if we haven't become the people that we dream of being, people that we love and enjoy being, people that we're proud of being, then even having of all the things is not going to even feel as sweet, but also we won't even be able to um, actually have the real reward which that we want, which is to be in our own magnificence. So how about we accept the opposite invitation? We reverse engineer this and say, if I can practice being a person I love being, which means I can do that whether the situation today is good or bad or challenging or pleasant, every single one of those is a different training ground for me to practice a different facet, a different side of myself that I haven't been able to flex before, because I've been too focused on, once I get this thing, then I can chill, or then I'll like myself, and then the work will stop. So coming back to strategy, what's interesting is that depending on your design, your strategy is either to inform, to respond, to be invited, or to be guided by the universe. Now, implicit in every single person's strategy is some form of waiting, because we are co-creating, we are in that co-dance with the universe. So what's really, really key for us to get as we go into this new paradigm is that it is not about more shots. It is about fewer shots on target. Now, what that means is, think about it this way. Imagine if you only received a handful of strong, intuitive guidances a year. Imagine if you only received a few different directives every single year. But imagine if you felt them deeply and honored them deeply when they came in, understood them for being exactly what they were, and then had the courage and the bravery to follow up on them. We wouldn't need to be doing 1,000 things a day. We wouldn't need to be actioning and leaking our direction towards so many different things. We would be happier just sitting on our life force, waiting for it to build up, so that when the next intuitive guidance comes to us, we have enough in reserve to fully enter into that dance with it. That's what the strategy is. And so what I want everybody to remember here is, can we be brave enough to call back some of our energy and sit on it, and then understand that the real power is that when the intuitive guidance comes to you, which it comes to all of us, can we muster up the bravery to do what it's asking us to do, even if, again, our minds, their sneaky ways, come in and say, but how do you know that if you don't feel lit up by posting on social media, you're never going to have a business, you're never going to have clients? And how about the fact that a lot of people are feeling moved away from social media? And what if the people that don't want to post on social media are going to be ahead of their time when social media changes completely, and then all of a sudden you've been busy building in a few months ahead of time the thing that is actually going to draw people and places and opportunities to you that was setting you up correctly for this new paradigm? What if, for example, you don't feel like, getting pregnant before you're 30 because there's a pressure of doing so? And then all of a sudden, it ushers in this whole different way of doing motherhood that's going to happen post 2027. And again, you're perfectly placed to do it. So it's not that we don't hear our intuition, it's that we aren't brave enough to trust that it's telling us something because we, with our minds and our empirical evidence gathering, can't see how that is going to turn out well. And so the most common question I get, probably more than all of the others, is how do I know fear versus intuition? And my answer is actually that it's usually the same thing. Usually you are deathly afraid of doing what your intuition is telling you to do. And so the challenge is not to wait until you're not afraid, but the initiation, the trial by fire, is to be afraid and still do it, because in doing so, you are saying that you trust the universe more than you trust your conditioned mind. And in doing so, that becomes a death of the ego mind. And that is how you become who you came here to be, is that you kill off different parts of your old conditioned self every time you listen to yourself, the part of you that doesn't make sense, the part of you that society doesn't have existing evidence that a person like you works out well or has success or turns out to be happy or turns out to be ahead of their time. And yet you still do it anyway. And the thing that's different about this time is that doing that, choosing that, is no longer the luxury. It is no longer something that we get to choose to do one day soon. And we can tell ourselves that we can still do it the old, scared, conditioned, status quo way for now. We absolutely have to do it now because, ladies, and if there are some gents listening, if we don't do it now, we will be behind. And if you're listening to this now, you are someone whose soul knows it wants to be ahead of the curve, even though that's braver, even though that is scarier, even though parts of you die off quicker than you see everyone else also having those similar ego deaths before you even know that it's going to work out, because it's a journey that you have to walk alone, because it's literally just between you and the creator. And no one can say you're doing this right. Absolutely no one, no guru, no expert, because you are going to walk a path that they have never walked before. And they are not going to be exposed to the same types of experience, the same kinds of parts of you that are dying off, that need to die off in you, that maybe don't need to die off in them. So this, and human design in general, is about you being your own permission slip, even if you don't see before you start any evidence that this is going to work out well. And so this is the invitation of why you have a life that is not like anyone else's who has ever trodden this earth before you, because the universe would not waste any energy to incarnate you if you were going to walk a copy and paste life or follow someone else's well-trodden footsteps. Along comes human design and says, even if you don't know exactly what your future self looks like, even if you are deathly afraid, just repeat and rinse these two instructions over and over, and you will be okay. And they are your strategy and your authority. So your strategy is wait until the forces around you have decided that is divine timing to start coalescing to bring something to fruition, right? So before you reach out to certain people as a projector, wait until you feel seen by them. Wait until you feel like they're actually curious. As a manifesting generator or a generator, wait until you've actually seen the thing kind of swirl around you You've whiffed it in real life. It's close to you. It's in your ether. Someone else already has it, or someone has messaged you about it, or you've seen an advert for it, until you've had that ability to touch, taste, and smell it rather than just conceive of it. And then you felt your physical self say, I want that, right? That is waiting for things to come to you as well. Even if your mind says you're ready and you need to get ahead of things and you need to figure out what to do now, you absolutely don't, because if you do it from only the mind being ready, you will burn that blessing to a crisp. This is all of us. If you wait until your body, your aura is on board, you and your energy will turn that blessing into gold. It's not the blessing itself that will turn you into gold. It's the other way around. It is your alignment that turns that opportunity into gold. As a manifester, if you wait to inform until you've had the urge, until you feel it literally coming out of you, my sister who's a manifester describes it the exact same way as the urge to sleep or the urge to pee. It's not a choice in the mind. It's like your feet are just moving you to it. And again, we get afraid that if we never force ourselves to, our feet will never do it. But it's because we're not letting the reserves build up. And the reflectors, if you are trying to be too impulsive and too reactive and too in the moment and too spontaneous because you think that that's the way you have to be full of life, or to ever get anything done, or ever have any false sense of certainty, it's not going to happen for you. So implicit in all of our strategy is this invitation to trust that God's timing is beautiful, and that all we need to do is help that timing come at the best time instead of delay it, by aligning ourselves, having the self-esteem, having the belief in self, starting to treat ourselves like we are a precious piece of the divine, and that we need to start looking after ourselves and revering ourselves. So a good journal prompt for you today is, if I had healthy self-esteem, how would I move through my day today? Or how would I move through this moment? If you keep on doing that, I promise you that the invitations, the opportunities, the synchronicities will come to you at the perfect time. And then all you'll need to do is respond to the invitation, respond to the thing, respond to the urge, respond to the message that keeps coming to you as a reflector. So that is your strategy. That's already deeper than lifetimes of work could take us. So even if you just did that one thing over and over for the rest of our lives, that would usually give us more alignment than trying to integrate so many other spiritual concepts all at the same time and be scattering our energy and be still rushing around trying to be the cliche spiritual and tick all the boxes. The second thing is our authority. Now, I would posit, as a deep studier of this wisdom, that we all, where we feel most of our suffering and our struggle, is when we face forks in the road and we don't know where to go. We don't know what to do. We agonize, we opinion shop, is it X or is it Y? Is it X or is it Y? And we stay in this torture for such a long time. And again, the reason why we torture ourselves is because we don't trust that there is a part of us that's not our mind that knows how to make the decision. And that, yes, the mind might have a hard time with the answer, but the answer still comes to us nonetheless. And so the work is not only the ability to differentiate which part of us is answering the question correctly and what it sounds like, but also knowing that you listen because you know better than to listen to the mind stories of why that is dangerous or uncool or going to make you unsuccessful or not belong or not like your old persona that you had to be for yourself. So the authority is, how do you listen to all the different voices inside your aura? There is one that is the MVP, the one that gets to make all the major decisions in your life. Depending on what your authority is, it will be your sacral. So that's your gut. That sounds very different to your emotions. It sounds very different to needing to bounce things off other people and use them as a sounding board. It's very different to listening to your ego. These are all different forms of authority in human design. And if you know what your one is and how it comes through for you and how it sounds like in your body, and you're able to differentiate that voice from all the other voices of fear and conditioning, then you always know which way to go. And then once you always know which way to go, then the work is, I can't unsee it. And now I just have to get all parts of me safe enough to follow, unscared enough to listen. But even if you are trying to force yourself to feel safe, even if you're trying to force yourself to feel unscared, there is something incredible that happens when you listen to the voice of your authority over and over and over. And this is actually why in the app now we created what's called the Decision Maker, which is an authority journal. So every single day, your challenge is to write down one choice that you're facing and to recognize what the voice of your authority is telling you to do about this decision, even if you can't action it. Because eventually what happens, and this is a very deeply spiritual concept that comes in, is that it becomes the choiceless choice. Meaning that once you've seen your authority speak to you and tell you to do the correct thing enough times in your life, in your situations, then even if you feel like it's going to be an ego death, you feel like you cannot not listen to your authority. It just becomes choiceless. It's like you feel tempted by the other shiny carrots, but you're like, I'm sorry. I know this. My voice is my mind is telling me that I'll be more popular if I still stay this way. I'll be more cool, but I literally can't not listen to that random voice that makes no sense inside me because it's proven me right enough times. I've seen it in hindsight. I've seen it with this journal that it does come through for me every single time. And the only thing that is standing in our way is the collectively accepted reality that we're all still buying into, that we've now become enslaved to, that is the thing that ends up keeping us small, even though we think that we have to abide by its rules to make us big. So I wanted to dedicate this session to explaining the profound nature behind why we always say in human design strategy and authority, because it sounds so basic, but often the most deeply needle moving things in our spiritual growth journey are the simple things like surrender, or remember that you are held, or the stuff that we've glossed over probably when we thought we were in our like basic spirituality phase, and now we're kind of circling back around and really seeing how deep and true they really are. It doesn't sound glamorous enough. It doesn't sound complicated enough to have our egos be so entranced by it, because our egos need that complex dance to feel special, to feel like it's a constant thing that we need to understand deeper. And we don't. We just need to be annoyingly simple about it, and understand that the hard part is in the being annoyingly simple about it. The ego hates that. And so the ego is going to have to die off. If we make it complicated and we create 1,000 rituals around it and 25-step process and all that kind of stuff, the ego is still in the driver's seat. And so human design is the way that we retire the mind and let it be free to become a genius at something else other than the navel gazing and the things that it just cannot see, which is itself. So that we get to see what geniuses we are. We get to see how wise we are. We get to see the beauty of our perspective, because in human design, our minds, since we are all fractals of the same original crystal of consciousness, eventually we are moving into a world where we are just expressing the perspective of the light shone through our side of the crystal. And so the mind needs to be free to do that. And that is the magic. When you allow yourself to be in passenger consciousness, to not put the complexity of needing to figure everything out all the time, and surrender the mind to the form. It's not easy. There are always new levels, but my God, once you start and you get a taste of this different lane of living life through that is available to all of us, and the peace that comes out of you when you live that way, the calmness, and the way that the calmness makes you a channel, the way that the calmness makes your genius come out of you in ways that your mind could never actually try to figure out if you were trying to think about what your purpose was. And you just become so in awe of the magnificence that was kind of always there, that you always knew you were capable of, but that you could never think your way into iterating and feeling and discovering. It's truly my prayer and my promise to you that if you really, really understand and dedicate yourself to living according to your strategy and authority, and understanding that this already has its instruction manual, and if you just follow it and allow the old versions of you to die off and who you think you are and who you've told yourself you had to be, then you don't need to know the greatness that you're capable of, you will see it come out of you. It will reveal itself to you, and you will fall so in love with that side of you that you never could even conceive of before. And that is what becoming who you came here to be is. You don't need to know what it is. You don't need to know who he or she is. It will constantly have new levels to show you, as long as you let go of the ideas of what you thought it was, even in its greatest form. If it was conceived by the mind, it still has limits. So here's to your rising. You are listening to this today because you are ready. You are ahead of this. You are supposed to be a leader as we move into this new paradigm. And the way that you are going to lead is by your own energy, not about what we say. It's going to be about the way that you live true to your most individuated, non like the old paradigm, conditioned like everybody else self. And the more you can live outside of those lines as a beacon, the easier it becomes for other people to jump outside of that conditioned stream too. So I love and appreciate you guys so much. Here's to your rising.